I guess I could pause it, but I don't know. It's kind of nice to get them in chunks, I think. It'll make it a little bit easier to upload and crunch. Maybe not. I'm also used to Zoom for my work, and there's no real way that I found to pause a recording in Zoom. You pretty much have to stop it and then crunch it and then make another one. So I guess that's why I'm in the habit of doing that. All right, I'm now sharing and recording. You are being recorded for posterity. Okay, let's see. Where were we? Actually, let me make sure my files are up here, my notes. There we go. Good. Okay, so I said that we were going to format the body copy next, so let's go ahead and do that. So by the body copy, I mean the stuff that's, that theoretically users would actually read through if they were going to, which most web users don't, right? So hopefully they would read the paragraph, the block quote, maybe look through these guys here. That's body copy stuff. I wouldn't count the footer. This is more like small type. It's almost like metadata here, or meta content. But mainly this stuff up in here. So let's go ahead and format some of that stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and select for P. And let's do a compound selector here. P and UL. I'm trying to set up a battle in specificity and see if we can get a battle going between footer P and regular P. I can tell you right now that if I do just paragraph, that this one is more specific than this one. This one will override this one, even though this one comes after this one in the CSS flow. Let's say I do, let's say I just do text align right. Okay, so I'm just going to save that and go back over to the browser here. And where's my document? There it is. I know, thank you. So you see all these actually it's just the one paragraph, so it's aligned right. Don't ever do that to anybody, by the way. It's really hard to read that way. But notice that it's not interfering with this one down here. Again, even though it comes after the other one in the CSS flow. And that's because this selector is more specific than this one. That's what specificity means. How specific is the selector? This one's more specific. It says grab the P that's inside the footer. This one just says grab all the paragraphs. So the paragraph that's inside the footer is more specific than just all the paragraphs, right? It's going for one element in particular. It could be more than one paragraph, but still it's a more specific thing. If it's easier to think of it this way, just think, okay, this one has two tag selectors in it. This one just has one tag selector. Two tag selectors beats out one tag selector. It's almost like playing checkers or something. But then if I do something like this, P comma UL, I've effectively added another selector in here. So I'm just curious, is this going to work, or is this one now going to override the footer P? I go back over here. And, okay, so first of all, it does take the UL and throws it up to the right there. Look how horrible that is. The bullet points are all the way over here, and the text is all the way over here. That's about as unreadable as you get. Let's check the footer. Nope, it still didn't do the footer. So the footer P still is more specific than these because these will be counted separately from each other. So this is all good. Let's get rid of that text line right. That's not doing anybody any favors. What I do want to do is add some line height to this. So this was actually something that I should have put up here in the miscellaneous that I forgot to. Line height, oops, dash, there we go. Line height, this is something that gets used quite a bit. And by line height, we're talking about the amount of space between baselines in a paragraph or whatever. And it tends to, this is 120%. It's a little bit tight by default. And so very often you want to add a little bit extra for paragraphs and sometimes lists and things like that. So let's do a line height So I'm going to try 120%, and that should be the same. Well, it made a very slight difference there. I guess it's very slightly less than that for some reason, but it's right around 120% anyway. So if I make it like 150%, then what it does is it just, I don't know, it makes things breathe a little bit more, right? It's a little bit less clenched, a little bit looser. I think it's a little bit easier to read. Now that's quite a bit, adding quite a bit. I suppose a typographer would say 140% might be a little bit more
So apparently,
responsive.
if you forget to put the percentage in there, that line height becomes massive.
It's probably thinking of it in terms of pixels or perhaps ems. No, it's not pixels. I think that's ems. I think that's 140 ems. So if you did want to do an ems, it's nice to know that you don't actually have to put em in. So instead of let's say, so 140% would be the same as 1.4 ems. Let's see if that works. Yeah, that's the same thing. So you could do it either way. You could think of 140% or 1.4 em, or at least in Edge, you don't have to put the ems in there. But see, this is the kind of thing, like I'm not sure if that's standard or not. You'd have to check this in all the commonly used browsers to make sure that that actually works consistently across browsers. Or there's a very useful little website called caniuse.com, and this is for HTML elements that might be cutting edge, CSS properties, JavaScript, and so on. I'm not even sure how you'd look this up. Line height ems maybe? Will it give me anything? No. That's the trouble. I mean, it's going to look up CS property line height, but I'm not sure how you would go about looking up like line heights without adding the values. But anyway, so that's probably not the best use for this ever. But caniuse.com is actually a really good resource. I should actually put that into the useful links. So maybe I'll leave this open so to remind myself. So without a good way of knowing, or without the time to check cross-browser compatibility, doing something like this, I mean, that's a little bit of sugar that you don't really need, right? So just go ahead and put the ems in there, and then you can be sure that all browsers will be able to handle it. Now, what else do I want to do? I think I want to take the bullet points off of the list here. So let's do a list style none, and takes those guys right off of there. There are other things that you can do. For instance, if you do disk, it gives you your regular bullet points back, right? That's the default. If you do circle, I believe it will give you empty disks like that. Let's try lower Roman, right? You can do all kinds of things like that. So like I was saying, it's worthwhile to go to MDN, and they will give you like all of the different possible, values you can use for list style. But for now, I just want to use none to get rid of it altogether. But it is kind of fun to play around with. And maybe when I do that, I was going to go into padding. Let's leave that for Thursday. So I guess this is it for right now for the paragraph and UL. But I do want to do what we were talking about with the links. So remember, I don't like the color so much, and I definitely won't like the visited color. I don't like the underline. And yeah, we're thinking maybe when we do a hover state over, it will bring the underline back. That's a pretty commonly used trope. So let's go ahead and do this first. So if I just do A, remember it's an anchor element here, right? It's an A element. Where'd they go? Here they are. A href equals blah, blah, blah. So that's what we want to select for. And if I do color, and let's see, I picked out something that I liked for it. I think I'm going to do RGB values of, what did I do? 100 and 150 and 240. So 100, 150, 240. So you guys know, right? This is red, this is green, this is blue. Blue has the highest value, so it's going to be some kind of blue. there's a little bit more green than there is red, so it's going to be kind of a cool blue. It's going to be greenish blue. And so there are our new link colors, right? So that works okay. Let me see if I tap on this and then go back again, return, and actually that was enough. I'm a little bit surprised that that fixed it. It might just be this browser. I don't trust it. I'm going to go ahead and show you some pseudo selectors here. So there's something called a link, which is just the color of the links themselves. Now when I did that, it reverted back to the purple, right? So I guess if I do the A without the pseudo selectors, it grabs both linked and visited. Well, let's say we're doing these separately as we'll want to for the hover state. So to get that purple away again, if we're going this way, then there is an A visited, which of course is what those purple links are right now, showing what we've already clicked on. Copy this color and paste it back in here, and then it fixes that. Underneath a link, I'm also going to do a text property here. And this is one that I didn't put up here, but I think we better, which is text decoration. Because that's what adds the underline there. This is a text decoration underline that the browser is putting on there. So if we go to a link and we want to override that, we do text decoration none. We go over there and boom, underline's gone. They're not really necessary. But let's say we want to bring them back when the user hovers over these, which I think can be kind of slick. Well, we've got two pseudo selectors here. We've got a link and a visited. Let's do an a, you guessed it, hover. And we will do a text decoration that overrides the other one, underline. And refresh, and now when we hover, we get those underlines back. Now I think that's perfectly fine. The underlines are kind of ugly, but they're better than they used to be. Notice that when I hover over this, you see how the underline is skipping the descender of the Y there? That's pretty slick. Browsers did not used to be smart enough to do that. They would just put an underline and they would smash it right through all the descenders, and it was thicker than this, and it looked just ugly. Just, ugh. You'd never want underline on anything if you could help it. But if someone hovers and the underline comes, I think that's fine. And it's a nice little bit of reinforcement of the UI that, oh yeah, if you click here, something is in fact going to happen. So that's what these guys look like here. So here's what I'm wondering. Can I use a hover and just switch this to a link? I'm going to comment out a visited here. And then just switch this to a. I don't think this is going to work. And I guess it did. That's something that it seems to me like maybe that didn't used to work. So this is again something that I would want to check in multiple browsers to check compatibility. But I think for now I'm going to leave this as it was. But I will make a note for myself to check that at some point. Any questions about formatting the body copy here? Or what we just did with those hyperlinks? All right, groovy. We're doing good. Let's see, we've just got 3 more things left to do. I'm going to show you text shadow just because it's kind of fun. We'll take a look at the browser inspector to see where the overrides are happening, and then we'll finally get that logo in there, which is one of the more important things. Let's check out the browser first of all here. If I do Control-Shift-I, then it'll bring up this console. We took a look at this at the beginning of the term. And I'm going to go to, I'm dropping this down, I'm going to go to elements here. And remember that I was saying this is what shows the DOM structure. So this is the page as it appears, as painted, as it were. And then this is the DOM, which can be manipulated by, JavaScript. And then if you go down here, under styles, it shows you what the CSS properties that you're doing here. And you can check or uncheck these to just see how they look. Okay, so font family, there's Times, and then here it is Georgia. And you can see, oh yeah, that definitely looks better, right? It's definitely easier to see. The Times looks like it's almost disappearing now. And then when I put the Georgia in there, it looks like it's now sitting comfortably into the pixels of the browser. But also notice over here, it'll show you what document we're talking about. So inside here, this is the main.css. This is from the margin 0 on the body is from normalize.css. Remember, that's the first style sheet that we called in from cdn.js. If I take the margin 0 off of that body again, it puts that margin in again, and so on. And then here, user agent style sheet. So this is what's being applied by the browser before either the normalize or the main CSS. Before any of the CSS that we add, there's a style sheet that's being used by the browser to format this stuff. For instance, body is display block. It does not have those check marks next to the user agent style sheet stuff. If I want to see what that looks like, then I would have to go into my CSS and actually override it, do a display none or display inline or display inline block or something. So a little bit further, this is box model stuff. This is what we're going to be doing on Thursday, where you have an element width and height, you have padding around that, you have border around the padding, and then margin around all of that stuff. This is the box. This is the box model. So Thursday for that. So it's usually a good idea when you're doing CSS, if you want to test stuff out in a sandbox type environment, then open up the inspector. So once again, what I did was Control-Shift-I. I think you can also do Control-Shift-J, and it will bring you to the console. Yep. And same thing, drop it down and go to Elements, and then you can see your DOM and your CSS and why it's doing that. Another way you can get there, of course, is to go in through here and do a right-click and go to Inspect. You can do this in any browser. It's either Inspect Element or Inspect or something like that. So either way. Okay, so that's that. And show you a text shadow, which is kind of fun. I'm going to go to this and change a little bit of the HTML here. I want to do a drop shadow or a text shadow on just the 75th up here. In order to do that, I need to have some element that encompasses that so that I can select for it in the CSS. In JavaScript, you can get it to count in a certain number of characters and then create a selected area here and then, you know, do whatever you want to it in JavaScript. But there's no real way to do that in CSS that I know, like grab the third word in the paragraph. So if you want just a generic container to go inside a text element, it's generally going to be span. Remember we were saying that div is a generic block level container. Like if I wanted to throw a bunch of elements into something and I didn't have a particular, like it's not a header, it's not a footer, I don't know what it is, I'm just going to put it into a div. Same thing, but inline here, you're going to use a span instead. So I'll put a span around there and let's give it a class. Class equals, and let's call this shadow. So a class is the other thing that you can name something. For the H2, we gave it an ID because we figured, okay, so this is the only site ID on the page. So we're safe calling it ID equals site ID because that's the rule for ID, is that you cannot have another ID equals site ID anywhere on the page. Same thing with tagline. I'm not expecting to use the tagline anywhere else on the page or any page, so I'm just going to call it ID equals tagline. But this one, I might have multiple elements on the page that I want to put this text shadow on, maybe. So in that case, I'll use a class instead of an ID, so that then if I wanted to, I could go down here and also do class equals shadow, right? I don't think I want to, but I could if I wanted to because that is okay. It's okay to have a class name repeated, but not an ID. I think it makes sense. I mean, think about like the ID in your pocket, right? Your California issued ID. There's only one of you in the whole state of California, right? No one else is going to have exactly that ID. Whereas a class, think of like a class of students or a class of objects or a class of whatevers, right? That means that there's more than one of them. There's this bunch of them just swimming around, right? So that's ID versus class. Let's go ahead and I guess this should go up into the header grouping here. So let's do now. Okay, so when you select for an ID, you use the hash punctuation at the beginning of the selector. When you're selecting for a class, you use dot punctuation. So dot shadow, since it's class equals shadow, and we will be able to select for that. So let's do this guy here, text shadow. There's also a box shadow that we'll get to know a little bit later on. And for this one, it's expecting 3 different distance values and then a color. So if I put like 2px, usually for small values, I'll slip back into using pixel values instead of like m's or percentages or anything. So I always forget which order these in, but basically it is how far are you going to push it to the right, how far are you going to push it down, 2 pixels each way, and then how large is the text shadow going to be. So since I don't remember for sure, let's go ahead and test this after we get this in here. We'll try changing these values one at a time and see what happens. And then let's see, what color, let's go ahead and use, what color are we using for, yeah, I think we switched to this RGB value here.
It's left, down, right.
I'm sorry, left, down, right?
Yeah, for your pixels.
That doesn't make any sense. Why would I put a left value and a right value?
Or left, or down. Yeah, you move it left, then down. Now, okay, I'm confused.
I bet it's right.
Yeah, right.
I bet it's right and down and then the spread of the shadow.
Probably, yeah.
That's what my guess is. So after these guys, we'll put in the RGB value to get that red color. Let's test it. I'm going to go back over here, scroll up, and there it is. It looks pretty nasty. That is partly because of the font I chose, actually. The text uses the sans serif, and that probably works a little better for this. Let's change our values one at a time before we do anything else and see what happens here. If I take this third one and switch this to 10, I'm thinking this is probably the spread. What happened? There we go. So I'm expecting to see a larger drop shadow here when I do this, and yes, that's the spread. So let me Z that. And then for this, let's do a larger value for the first value, like 12, and I'm expecting this will push it further to the right, and yes, there it is. So it's
I'm sorry, I had food in my mouth. It's x-axis, y-axis, and then shadow or blur radius. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right. So right, down, and then the spread.
Correct.
So you can put negative values in here as well. If you wanted to push this to the left, for instance, you put -2 pixels and go and throw it out that direction as well. Actually, strangely, looks a little better with this typeface. Let's see what happens when we change the color, because that's part of the problem here. If I do color, and there's nothing wrong with just slipping back into English-based colors if you want to. I mean, the RGB of this is 255, 255, 255. Or the hexadecimal is FFFFFF with a hash. It's easier just to type white, and there's no problem doing it. I don't know of any performance hit that comes from doing it in English, and yeah, that's not really working, is it? Let's try this back at +2. Yeah, it's not really working. I think for this one span, we're going to go ahead and bring that Verdana back in again. So I'm going to do font family Verdana, sans serif, and yeah, it still doesn't look wonderful, but it looks better that way. It needs something a little bit blockier in order for it to work. You know, it may work better later because I know this header at some point is going to have a background color. So let's go ahead and leave this as it is for now, even though it looks awful, but we'll fix it later. So that is the old text shadow, or actually ye new text shadow. It's only been around for, I'm not sure, but in any case, not before CSS3. CSS3 was not a monolithic standard either. It was not something where they just let the whole thing drop on one day and then all browsers were conforming to it the next day. You know, stuff got added piecemeal as the years went along, and not all browsers would support the stuff, you know, immediately or in the same way for quite a while. I think they're finally on board with most of it, but it took quite a while for some of this stuff. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is important. This is a way of getting the logo in there. Now, what the textbook has you do, and what I have a problem with, The textbook has you go in here, and you guys know how to do this. You put the image source equals, and then put in, the logo image, pathway, whatever. Yeah, you can do it that way, but I don't know any developer who does it that way. Like, I don't know anybody who does it that way. The logo is considered formatting. It's considered formatting, so you put it in the CSS and not in the HTML. Again, I don't know if anybody who does it by actually slapping it into the HTML like that. So how do you get it into the CSS? Well, it's almost always done as a background image. In fact, I would barely hesitate to say it's always done as a background image. I don't think I've ever seen it done any other way. And there are various tricks that you can do in order to put it into the background image of the H2 itself. And then just jump through a couple of hoops to get the text of H2 to disappear, so it shows you the image instead of the text. But in this case, these guys are both inside of a header, and it's very easy to get the logo in as a background image on the header and still leave this stuff visible. So let's go ahead and do it that way. And that's why in CSS, we added a text indent of 80 pixels on both this H1 site ID and tagline. H2 and H3, in order to push those out of the way of the logo. So the CSS is super simple. Since this is the header, let's go ahead and put this up at the top of this section. See what I mean about just kind of organizing things a little bit? Especially with the comments, it's going to make it much easier on Thursday for me to go in here and see what I did and why, and if I need to change something, it'll make it that easier for me to find. So let's select for the header. Right now it's the only header on the page. If we wind up doing another one somewhere else on the page, then we'll have to make this guy more specific. But for now, I think it's fine. And
I'm gonna need you to slow down and step back a couple places. I need to see the index file again.
Sure thing.
Because I don't have my span command in correctly.
How's it looking?
See, span class shoutout, then 75. Then the sup opens, th, close sup, close span.
This is a
Year.
good illustration of what we were talking about on Thursday about making sure that nested tags close in the opposite order in which they opened. So they open span and then sup, and then closes the opposite way, sup and then span. And then also H3, right? Closes after everything else.
Ah, that's why. That's why it's screwy. Oh, that broke it. That didn't work either. What's going on? Okay, let me look over this again. Celebrating R.
Share a screen, prop.
You know what? Let me go ahead and do the background image, and then Matt, I'll come back to you, okay?
Okay.
Let's do that. Because this is going to be the last thing, and then we'll get the recording stopped, and then we'll come back, and I'll take a look at everybody's in lab. Okay, so I'm selecting for this header here, which is the thing holding the H2 and H3. And let's go ahead and do background image. And let's see, do I want to do it that way, or do I want to do the other way? Well, let's do it this way to start with. So background image, and then like the RGB values, it's actually a function, right? RGB and then 3 arguments. So this one is going to be URL, and then I'm going to look inside images for what is it called? Where is it? Where's my stuff? There it is. Townhalllogo.gif. I don't like that name. You guys don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I'm going to rename this. I don't know if anyone ever called, just call it logo.gif. I mean, who wants to type that, really? Okay, so I'm going to go back over here and logo.gif. That's easier. Now, I want to let you guys know right off the bat, this is going to break at first. I'm going to save this, try it out in the browser, but it's not going to work. And yeah, nothing is showing up there. And actually, where did my text indent go? Oh, does this need to be in quotes? I think this needs to be in quotes.
Yeah, I think so.
So go over here, but still not working. So why is it not working? Well, it's a different pathway from the CSS file to the images subfolder. Let's take a look at the folder structure here. So this
You
guy
have to do a
here,
little.
so in the HTML, when we're calling in those images, we're able to just say look inside images for this particular picture. But now the CSS file is inside styles, right? It's way in here, so I have to tell it to go up one folder first to the root directory and then look for images. So I have to actually do ... / remember that's the way that you go up to one image, go up one directory rather, and then images, and then logo.gif. So I save that and I go back over to the browser, and there it is, and I've got a big mess on my hands, don't I? Well, there's also a background repeat property.
Understatement there. That is a absolute disaster.
Well, you don't think that looks good?
No.
Let's fix that. Let's do a background repeat. Repeat and no dash repeat. So technically this is box model stuff. We should really be doing this on Thursday, but some people would say it's part of the type formatting to get the logo in there. So that's why I'm doing this. So background image, there's the URL, and then background repeat, no repeat. Save, go back over here, and now it's just the one. There's also background position. You can put on multiple backgrounds. You can put on background gradients and flat colors, with all kinds of stuff we can do. But what I really want to figure out right now is why that text indent property is not working. And I don't know why. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to try taking this and I'm going to put it above the other stuff that I just did and see if maybe it was something that I just did. And no, that's not right. Oh, I know what it is. What's my most common mistake, Mr. Godfrey?
Commas.
Commas. I got an extra comma in there. It's breaking the whole rule. Get rid of that extra comma, and there we go. And yeah, we were right. There's not enough space there in between those, so let's make that a little bit bigger. Let's try like, I don't know, like 92.
82. Oh, you can do that much too, yeah.
There we go. That looks better. Now, don't worry for now about the fact that it's touching the edge of the browser window, because that's the normalized.css that started out by taking the margin off of the body element. We'll fix that on Thursday when we do box properties. And for now, I think this is fine. I'm definitely going to figure out a different color for this because it's not matching my link color at all. This maroon color and that. No, this is light and airy and happy, and this is serious and traditional and homey and warm and so on. So it does match the logo though. So
Mr. Bispo, where did you add the commas?
I had an extra comma
On tagline.
Yeah, right after tagline here, I had an extra comma, which I often do that. I often put a trailing comma in where I don't need one, or forget to put a comma in where I do need one. It's one of the first.
Yeah, I checked mine to see if I made the same mistake, but ironically, I didn't have the comma there. So.
And you'll also see that the function for color there, it changes and it doesn't actually display the color, which generally indicates that there's something wrong with it.
Ah, good troubleshooting. Boom. Absolutely right. Okay, I think I've thrown enough stuff your guys' way. As usual, I went about an hour over. But, you know, I think it makes kind of sense that I do because this is really lab stuff. It's not just lecture stuff. We're actually kind of doing the lecture and the lab all in one go. Speaking of which, I am planning on, after this last Friday, it felt like I was here for about forever and a half, so I'm not planning on doing the 30 minutes on Friday night for my office hour after class. I think instead what I will do is I will split it across Tuesday and Thursday nights. So 15 minutes after tonight, I will stick around till 9:15. I'll do the same thing on Thursday. And then, so I expect that'll be better for me, and I have a feeling it'll be better for you guys too, because I don't think anyone's really going to want to stick around until 9 on Friday night and then come chat with me about whatever help they need with their work. So let's do it that way again instead, and we'll see how that works. And then once again, if something different works better for you, then just throw me an email, let me know. And, when I see it, I will get back to you and we'll work something else out. So any final questions about this before I stop the recording?
The images logo, can you show how you did that again? Mine's not popping up.
Yeah, so the first thing I did was the background image. And here is what you have to do. You got to do the URL as a function. So the parentheses follow it. And by the way, if you put a space, that can break things. And then...
Yeah, definitely no space.
What's that?
There's no space on it. It's
No
just
space,
not
okay.
popping up. It's exactly how you have yours there.
Okay, let me go ahead and stop the recording, and then you can share screen and we'll take a look at it.